Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist, humanist, philosopher, and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, ignosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality, things that are found in religion. I support realism, axiology, of course, liberty, justice, ethics. I am also an anarchist socialist. I support Anarchism and socialism, progressivism, liberalism, philosophy, psychology, archaeology, and anthropology, advocating for sexual, gender, child, secular, LGBTQIA+, race, class rights, and equality. So if you can guess from all that, I support or challenge that I have an eclectic variety of videos on a variety of topics. Please take time to check them out, as well as if you enjoy them, please give them a like. And don't forget to subscribe, as new things are on their way all the time for my channel. Podcast that he does. My thing really isn't videos and podcasting as much. I'm more of a writer, so I like to write, and then I do art. Really, not because I have this dramatic love for art. It's more that I have an ability, and I realize I can utilize that in pushing my message across for the writing. So,
right. You do a great job with it, that's for sure.
Thanks. And also, like I talked to you before about my book. My book is going to have like 200 or more, 250, I don't know, pieces of art, like historical, archaeological stuff that relates to religion and stuff. So yeah, that's what another thing my art, is good for, is utilizing as a tool.
You depict yourself in cartoon character really well. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and if you notice, almost all of them are different, like positions and stuff where I'm in and doing things. Right. That's all to make it more exciting, because I understand people. Because like we're both going to talk about, today, In a sense, you have in a sense some schooling in psychology, and so do I. And that's also one of the things that I can utilize, actually trying to help people reason better, is my
Right.
understanding of how they're reasoning to begin with.
Yes.
So, because a lot of people they just get, in a sense, up against, resistance or whatever, and they just feel frustration because it is frustrating,
Yes.
and people feel like they have to, know everything, But the good thing about people like you and me is that we can know stuff and then explain it and help so other people can understand without having to have schooling or.
Yeah. I do have the ability to break it down so that even a child could understand it if need be.
Well, and to me, that's what I try to do. The same thing. I try to take really complex, like axiology that I use a lot. A lot of people haven't heard of, is really because it's like a doctorate level type of scientific use of philosophy, and
Hmm.
so because of that, it's not a standard thing. But I realize, but it's good to be able to value judge things accurately, which is what
Yes.
axiology is about. And then
Right.
understanding how to assess worth and goodness. I mean, who doesn't need to know that?
Right. I didn't know the term until I met you, and then I read what you had to say on your blog, and I began to understand more. But yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So I do the same thing. I try to take a really, because in fact, I even have a video that I did a long time ago where I talked to an actual doctor who he's an atheist, and he uses axiology in, I think, political science or something. But anyway, so because you need to know accurate, you need to know what's really valuable. Like, you can say, well, these are my opinion, my opinion, my opinion. Yeah, but which opinion is more closer to the facts, or
Right.
or has more human worth in its expression or whatever. So I mean, you need to be able to identify, and then you got to say, like, well, these people did bad things or these people didn't, and not, you need, especially like to talk about political, as I'm sure anyone knows, it's super easy to be biased is all shit. And so that's what axiology kind of limits some of that, because it's like adding logic. It uses actually calculus when they do it, in formal axiology, like the doctor. But I don't do that, because once again, does he really do that in his normal life? No. He doesn't sit there and break down the calculus of value for everything you. That's why I realized, okay, so you got it for science. Now we need something that's like usable in everyday life, because this is good stuff, but so we got to go something better than guessing, and then something easier than calculus.
Right. Yes. Agreed. That's why I like taking the psychology behind how our brain works and
Yeah.
placing it with experience, because then people begin to grasp it. They're like, oh, that's what that is. So
Oh, definitely, and that's why it's important. So go ahead and tell us about you, and promote, what you do and what's going on and what, in your background, and then go ahead and tell us if you want to. I identify, as an axiological atheist and an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, and an anarcho-humanist, which is basically I'm an anarchist and I'm a humanist, socialist, mutualist. I always said, you know what I like? Human flourishing. That's my
yeah,
goal. So
yeah,
things that go towards that, and not just one person or one group, but everybody, the whole
right, yeah,
planet. So if one country is doing terrible and everyone else is doing glorified, and we're not helping that country, to me, that would, it is my problem, is this
right.
thinking that we don't have to help. But anyways, so that's me. Go ahead and tell us about you and.
Okay. Well, my name is Deanna L. Lawlis. I am a former evangelical Christian. I have been removed from the church for 11 years. And I experienced religious trauma syndrome, and initially was diagnosed up front with post-traumatic stress disorder and dissociative identity disorder. But over the years of
I know what
therapy,
those words are, but could you just real quick, and maybe some people also do, but could you quick just explain what post-traumatic stress disorder and DID, or dissociative identity disorder, means, especially to you.
Yeah. Post-traumatic stress disorder pretty much is trauma that comes with a plethora of symptoms that, involves flashbacks or tremors or major anxiety, depression, the inability to just function in an everyday society, and based on triggers that are relevant to the trauma. Okay. And then dissociative identity disorder spans a vast array of diagnoses. You see, it was formerly completely called multiple personality disorder. And nowadays they've opened it up more. They spanned it out to where it doesn't necessarily take you to have multiple personalities in order to have dissociative identity disorder. It could be dissociative identity disorder could be as simple as you separating your from the identity you used to be and being confused about it all. So walking around in a state of confusion because you no longer identify.
Right. So I was going to say one thing that I think that people, when they have sometimes have a problem with PTSD, is that it's not that, to me, that the experience comes back as a memory. It comes more like as a reaction, or like an overwhelming feeling of it's like dread. Like, the feeling of dread. Nothing's happened, but yet you feel it, and it sometimes can be super strong, and yet nothing is happening. And so I think that people sometimes forget that it's not like you remember the exact event or something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, just I'm going to talk about in a little my experience where it comes to stuff that you deal with, and the fact that I went to I felt like a local church was a cult that I was in, and that some of the pray reading and stuff, that it's like mind control feeling. It is. Yeah.
Yep. So my experience of what flashbacks are is that when anything occurs that is remotely similar, it could even be just slightly to the experience. I used to have severe tremors. I'd start feeling faint. I'd start sweating profusely, and I would need to get away from the situation quickly in order to find myself in the moment. And so what came with that was just obviously that's what they call a trigger, and the response that happens when you're experiencing that is called a trauma response.
Right.
Now that can actually just be something that's going on with you, but it can also become outwardly aggressive, because obviously you're trying to flee a situation that's making you extremely uncomfortable, and certain things may take place. Someone standing in your face and screaming, and your trauma involves screaming, you might become physically violent, in the moment.
Right. But and then, even if you didn't become physically, people often become mentally violent in a sense to themselves. Like, yes. I always say that, to me, the longest lived oppressor too often is ourselves.
Yes.
Not just the other people. What I mean is, there was, like you were saying, like the religious trauma, they've given you this imprinted feeling, and then now you just feel it all the time.
Yeah.
But you forget it was not yours, it was theirs. It reminds me, like, the some of the things that, how even the local church people, like my father and some of them, would talk to people about Jesus. It's like, even if we're just a normal person just thinking rational, you think this is a little creepy, even if you believe in Jesus, because they would like come around you.
Oh yeah.
They get this like tone. It's something like, hey, do you know Jesus? You're like, what the? I mean, it's like, but to me, it reminds me of the feeling too, right? It's like in your mind, you're like surrounded with this thing, and it's this weird. weird thing that they're supposedly giving you this Jesus or God or love and religion or whatever in general is well-being that you're supposed to receive or betterment, but yet it often is this dark tunnel of control that just keeps getting darker. Because if you think about it, what is the best person following a religion is not the one moderate, it's the fanatic.
Yes.
So the moderate is the weirdo in a sense in a religious context, because the fanatic, what religious book the person in it is not a fanatic?
Yeah.
The goal or the emulated.
I had an incoming call and I had to decline it. Sorry.
Okay. I'll just edit it out.
Okay, it is a mind control. Because what really ends up happening, and I'm going to go ahead and get into what I sent you that I wanted to talk about in that is.
Well, you don't feel pressure to do it. Just,
It's fun. There's it goes along with that. There's a stereotypical reason, that people end up in religion. Either they're raised in it from birth on up, or they turn to it because maybe life has dealt them some oddities and they're confused and they want answers, and people around them are saying, hey, Jesus can help, and and they need help, so they so anyway, where was I at?
Unfortunately, because of that,
I go into mom mode and I go, I hope he's okay. Anyway.
You're explaining the stuff that you sent me in the list and that I put in the blog that you explained.
Right. So these people, whether they're children raised in it, or whether they're they've been brought into it because they needed something else, they were looking for answers in their lives, they come in with either they're raised and their mind is so young and pliable that this is what gets put into them. They start off open-minded, they start off capable of deciphering experiences, but then of course you have those that go in there that need something, they're looking for answers as adults, and they, because of their willingness to try to figure something out, they're also open-minded and pliable. And so they get in there.
Can you stop 1 second? I was going to say, to me, it's almost like self-help in general, though.
Yeah.
In other words, self-help doesn't create the movement. It's the need that people are hurting and would like to get help that self-help can then, in a sense, be a part of, or, in religious context, I feel like take advantage of. Here's a weak person. Like, to me, they'll go to people that are hurting. And you know what? It would be funny, though. Imagine if I, as an atheist, because I've gone and helped children in Mexico at orphanage, and I've gone and given food to homeless. To me, I feel like we in the world, as an atheist, don't have any magical anything coming to save us. So if something is going to be done, it's going to be done because good people did something. So that's what I try to do. But in a sense, religion says, oh, well, there is something coming. And even sometimes when they do good, it's not like my altruistic, in a sense, just for humanity. Not saying there's definitely religious people that do it for that reason, but they would do it whether or not they were religious. But there's other people who are doing it because they want the God, the something, or they're supposed to be, it's so. Then religion gets this better, like, oh, look how we're doing so good. Right. You create a few people who would have probably been good anyways, and like you said, are looking for the happy positive. But some of those people that are looking for the happy positive don't end up where they think they're going to go, because religion is like opens this door. Look, come on in. You come on in. All of a sudden you realize, whoa, I'm trapped.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen that abruptly that you realize it. I know it.
I was 35, so.
Right. But I mean, you end up forming relationships, so you've got bonds that occur there, and you end up over the years finding your identity in some of the teachings and the values and the things that they push, and to deny that, even though you may even along the way have questions, to deny what your experience has been, is to say that you were lying to yourself all along, or you were, you had gone crazy, or, whatever. So it's really hard to even begin to deny that, not to make mention you're warned not to question, because, hell is hot according to them. So then you're put in fear of not questioning, and then you develop the feeling of shame or guilt if you even have questions. I mean, it's such a...
Which is, in a sense, that's why it can never be, like I was saying, it's like a pseudo self-help.
Yes.
Or other help, or whatever you want to call it, because
yes.
It's always saying you're really not good enough. You
right.
really are weak and need help. It's not empowering, in other words. Like my thought is, I want to, like the people think, what do I want to do as an atheist? I don't push atheism. What I do is try to tell you the historical facts of archaeology and why reason through logic and rationalism, religion doesn't make any sense, even if you had no archaeology.
Yeah.
And then science alone shows us that not only God's not needed, but to add it would then be to accept that a God created the universe in a way so that only in 99.9% practically of all living things die to produce what's now.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of logic is that?
Right. Yeah.
Couldn't you just be now?
Yeah.
Or like you could say that the reality of now is to accept a world that this is the best world God could invent. Axiologically, that can't be possible. Couldn't we have a world where animals don't eat each other? Don't plants take nourishment both from the ground and from the sky? In a sense, why couldn't we be the same? If a God designed a universe, what kind of an ethical God would decide this? Everything eating. How about this? Why so many cancers? So many. I mean, just thinking alone, you start looking at the reality. That's what I was saying. To me, if you really accept the real reality of the world, then if there is a God, it's a monster.
Yes, agreed. 100%. Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't worship North Korea just because North Koreans, Kim Jong-un is real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the fact, even if there was a real God, if this is his best, wow, this doesn't deserve credit.
Mm-mm. And in fact, that's where I was at by the time that I completely washed my hands of the church, and that didn't even occur until a year and a half after my what I thought was my initial trauma. But that's back to what I was telling you, is that initially I was diagnosed with PTSD and DID. But over time through therapy, I came to understand I actually had complex PTSD. And what that is post-traumatic stress disorder that occurs over time through many traumas. And so it came with all of those things. And religious trauma syndrome was not discussed at that point. It's still not it's not an actual diagnosis yet, although Marlene Wyndham is attempting to get that done, which I think is a great idea.
So what you mean is it's not in the DSM. What is it? Last time I knew about it was 5 years. I don't know, some nonsense. But so maybe there's a new one. I don't know, because I've now not been keeping up on that for a while. But my point is, though, the DSM is, in a sense, the diagnostic manual for how you, in a sense, diagnose stuff. Now, people don't realize this, if I remember right, it started actually from the military trying to understand what they thought was shell shock, and that's how, in a sense, that DSM part. I'm not talking about all psychology. I'm just talking about the classifying stuff. So it started, in a sense, from that source, and then it's been a very rocky as you know, like they used to in '73, I think, before that, classify homosexuality as some sort of a problem. And after that, they changed. And then I feel like they still are nonsense about trans people and gender identity. They still got that, especially telling children what they are or not. Once again. So so my feelings are not 100% for anyone that wants my personal opinion about the DSM. So like you were saying, my point is, so the fact that it's not in there doesn't mean it's not credible. And the fact that something is in there doesn't mean it will stay in the opinion of what is credible. Because what's in there is kind of like, to me, supposed to be a general consensus. But as you probably would imagine, if your consensus is all religious people and you ask all of them, what do they think? I doubt that religious trauma is what they're going to come to the conclusion of.
Right. So you're right. And I think that the reason why Marlene decided that she wanted to try to coin that term, it makes sense, because there were so many different people coming forward out of the religious sector. I, for myself, initially, like I said, was diagnosed PTSD and DID, but it was caused by religious trauma. But they had those separate diagnoses, so they weren't able to compile it into, some document that says, well, this is the statistics of what is occurring when with people who have who are being diagnosed with these other disorders coming from religious backgrounds. So so this is supposed to assist, and this has been in the process of being this way, where she's trying to make it an actual diagnosis for the last 2 years. But that's the reason behind it, was just to make sure that there's a statistic that's being offered.
And since you brought her up, could you real quick, and I know that you might have already done it, could you tell us a little bit about, like I know you wrote a book, so tell us about the book and tell us about her stuff that you were just referencing. I know this stuff, but I want other people to, and then also your perspective of it.
Marlene Wyndham is a psychologist who specializes in religious trauma therapy. So you can find her on Twitter, probably other sites as well, but I don't have any other means of social media. But I know that she's on Twitter. She even has a community that you can sign up for and go in and discuss safely religious trauma experiences. Okay. I wrote a book about my experience, although the book is not completely about my experience. I also put in there what I went through with my diagnoses, what that meant, how I began my deconstruction and continued my deconstruction in the aftermath, what I had to do with my mind in order to do these things, so that I wasn't, because I'm telling you, it's just a mind screw, in the aftermath of this, trying to, one of the first traumatic things that you have to accept when you come out of it, when you decided you're done, is the fact that you participated the whole time, so whatever ended up hurting you, you possibly ended up doing to someone else. And then, the beliefs, having to break those beliefs down to what is tangible, what is logical, versus what wasn't,
I totally agree, because when I first turned atheist, I had never read an atheist anything. I did not know there was atheist community. I did not know any famous atheists. In fact, I had never even heard of any of this. Right? I was so like religious indoctrinated, in a sense, closed, even at 35. But I turned atheist all on my own with no influence of anything other than I had 2 classes on religion.
Yeah.
And the first class learning 10 different religion stuff, and then how they all were similar. I didn't even know 10 different Christian. I probably could have named 5 different Christian denominations. I really didn't know much.
Yeah.
I didn't care. You're all wrong. Who cares? I'm right. Boom. Total religious mindset. There's no reason to learn because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, but all of a sudden learning it, I started going, wait a minute. They all kind of say the same thing. They all say only their understanding of the afterlife is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Only their morality of how to get to the correct afterlife is correct.
Right.
Only they know how the way to live. They know how to. You have to do all that, and then if you do everything they say, then you get to their. And they all say this, and I was like, wow. And I
Yeah.
realized that's why I started realizing, how do I know that mine is true? I didn't know it was false. I just started realizing, whoa, if I know they're all false, and mine sounds just right, lockstep with all these other ones,
Yes.
how am I? And then also then I had to take another class on the Bible itself, and I learned archaeology stuff is why I started getting into archaeology. And I
Yeah.
was like, I can't deny facts that there's tablets older than the story of the flood, like 2,000 years, I think it is, the Epic of Gilgamesh and stuff written before the Bible flood story.
Yeah.
So it's real hard for me then to go, huh?
Yeah.
And so and then learning about the devil and Lucifer and Satan were all different beings or things, not
Yeah.
even the same.
Right.
And yet are offered as one continuous similar thing.
Yes.
When if you read it correctly, you realize this can't be.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, learning that stuff, I realized I had to not believe this. I just nobody told me to. It's just like I could always go, "Oh, you just want to sin?" Nope. I just started looking at it and going, I can't believe this anymore. And then, like you said, then I did feel the trauma of the first. I totally relate to the first one, but you didn't mention the second one that I felt big time. First was, fuck. I spent my whole life doing this.
Yeah.
I was 35. I'm like, I was going to become a Christian counselor and go save people for
Yeah.
Jesus. All of a sudden, I turn atheist in middle of class. Go, what do I fucking do now? That's the other thing was I didn't, like you said, I didn't know how to live without this. My whole purpose in life was to try to be Jesus, whatever. And now what the hell do I do? And then the other thought, which, like I said, to me was a lot of trauma, was this fear I'm going to lose my entire family.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to lose all my friends.
Yep.
I'm going to be alone.
Yep.
And
That to me.
And that did happen. I
Yeah.
basically lost all my friends, and I
Yeah.
lost all my family being
Yep.
close, and including my mom. When she found out, it was by accident. I didn't want to tell her because I was afraid.
Right.
Because I knew how she would be. That she'd probably just disown me, which is so, like you said, trauma. How is that not trauma? I'm worried she could disown me because I looked at this and said, I can't believe it no more. And so she's like, on the phone, she's like, oh, let's pray. And I just go, yeah, no thanks. She's like, are you mad at God? And I went, well, I don't believe in a God to be mad at one.
Yeah.
And then that was like the war started. She said a few things. I said a few things. Not mean, but like she tried to like prove God's real. And I destroyed every one of her arguments and explained why they're all wrong. And then she hung up on me and didn't talk to me for 2 months. And then she's like, I'm going to go ahead and love you anyways. I said, oh, don't do me any favors. What the hell? I didn't do anything wrong.
What is that? It's hot coals of conviction. Well, I can't remember. It's something like that.
So then she hung up and didn't talk to me again for another 2 months. And then finally, luckily, she did finally go, okay, I'm going to go. I love you, period. And I said, see, and I feel the same way, and nothing has changed, except I don't believe that, and I don't believe what you now believe, But anyways, so I was just, to me, there was a lot of trauma in that. And the whole alienation from everybody and everything that I felt, in a sense, safe and connected to was just ripped out from under me.
Yeah. See, that's one of the first things that was addressed in my counseling sessions, because there was 400 plus people that instantly walked away from me the moment I walked away from the church. And looking back, I think anybody has the justifiable reason today to walk away from the church. But back then, I felt I had a justifiable reason to walk away, and my justifiable reasons were I was assaulted by my pastor. And then the secondary justifiable reason, which caused me to wash my hands altogether, happened. I was already outside of that congregation, but then, I was still believing, I was still trying to continue in my faith. And then 630,000 Christians nationwide went and marched against the LGBTQIA community +2 at Chick-fil-A, and I was like, that's 630,000 Christians, and at that point I went, if this is God, then I'd take hell,
I agree. You also brought up another issue. I was born intersex and was not told, but I knew I was different. And it's just that they made a mistake when they were doing your circumcision, and I'm like, what? So they just lied to me. And I started having like gender sort of like identity, like differentiation, sort of like, I didn't always follow this male. I kind of male, female, sort of, I don't know, like, and but not. I mean, just like a mixture though, not trans, not like genderqueer, like but like all over the place,
Right.
in my life, not like it's like a dualism almost inside of me, always like strong both sides. But anyways, my point is, I was hated because of religion, because I wasn't born in a sense a male, so I wasn't ever acknowledged to being born. So my brother came in a sense, and he was the second, but they didn't put him in it. Like even at our table, and I was asked him why. I didn't understand why. You're religious, and I'm a big tough person. Why don't I get to sit at the head of the table because especially being religious, I thought the man's at the head of the table, whatever. So why am I not there? And they would not tell me. They would just go, oh, whatever. They wouldn't tell me. And in fact, when my friend came and lived with us, when I was a teenager, he said, hey, is it okay? They keep putting me sitting at the head of the table. He goes, isn't that where you should be? And I said, you know what? Take it. It's not mine. I don't know why, but it's never been mine.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of the trauma I experienced, this lifelong hate of who I am, and I didn't even know. And it wasn't until later I learned that I was intersex from a doctor. And he says, you should have known this. Your parents should have known this. And I'm like, really? He goes, dude, trust me. Anyway, so so I went and I told my mom, she was like, oh, yeah, we knew. And it's my whole life. Like I had to learn this at like, I don't think I was like 40 something or whatever, or I don't remember exactly, but what time, but I was a full-on adult before I even found out. And then, oh yeah, yeah, we knew. But they kept it from me because of their religion.
Yeah. That's so sad.
Anyways, because you brought that up, that's one of the traumas I feel I personally deeply experienced, this hatred, and worst thing is I didn't even know. Then now I find out, it makes me more pissed off. You were pissed because I was born this way?
Right.
What the hell?
Yeah. I know, that is so disheartening, because, well, these well-meaning Christians, who think that they're doing what is right in the name of their God, they are causing so much harm to people.
Oh yes, definitely.
I mean, how can you look at another human being and think that you are any greater than they are when we're all experiencing life, which is sometimes ugly,
Yeah, and, I agree. I never say I'm better than other people. In fact, I say I'm just a fellow dignity being. I know we're all just fragile bodies alone in the world.
we didn't walk into this, we didn't walk literally into this life. You know, we started as infants who needed our diapers changed. Then we learned to crawl. When we started walking, we fell down. This is how adulthood works. This is us trying to figure out how to maneuver in this life. Everybody makes these mistakes. The difference between a believer and a non-believer is a non-believer can admit that they're making mistakes, where a believer has to keep them in the closet because they're afraid that the people will judge them or that they're not right with God.
Well, and also I would say, to me personally, a non-believer, when a problem arises, I realize, we need to address this counseling or in a healthy way. I don't think, let's pray about it. You know, what good is that?
Yeah. Let me tell you a story behind that, Damien. This is one of the things that I've had to walk through and process through in the aftermath of being a Christian parent. Okay. I have a child who came to me when that child was a teenager and said to me that there was something wrong. They knew it. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't put their finger on it. And my typical response as a Christian was, let's pray about it.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I went through that praying process about it, right? Well, that child grew up with what people in the church may consider doing things that were rebellious, okay? Right. And ended up self-medicating on drugs and alcohol, and ended up just doing some really wild things, okay?
Self-harm behaviors.
Right. So there came our relationship failed, obviously, you know, and about a year and a half to 2 years ago, that individual called me screaming, crying, makes me emotional, to ask me why, you know, because they had been diagnosed a few days before they called me with bipolar disorder. And a lot of the things when you read about bipolar disorder could have been remedied if that child was on proper medication to begin with. The chaos that occurred in that child's life on into adulthood could have been prevented. And so therefore, how did I handle that as a parent? As a parent, I owned it. And I apologized profusely. And I sat there and I listened and heard what my child was saying to me. Because it doesn't erase what I helped to cause, but it does bring somewhat of a healing and a closure, sort of, to the child, not fully. What's left to them then is that they have to, you know, continue in therapy now to, you know, find some sort of sanity in this issue that's been created, and, you know, and find some resolve, you know, and all I can do now is continue to love my child, and when they want to talk, remain open to hear, you know. That's all.
Well, I think personally that is my way of doing things in general. Being willing and open to hear. Because if I'm not willing, I can hear you all day long. And I personally, so people know, I mean, and I say this all the time, I am a high-functioning sociopath. So it's very easy for me not to give a shit about things. I have to, like, sit down and focus and think about it. It's easier for me also to care about, like, humanity as opposed to people. Like an individual person. It's not that I'm vicious or something. It's just it's hard. It's easier for me to care, like I said, in the big thing. So that's why I'll try to focus myself both on doing that because it's a good thing, focusing on the big thing, that humanity. But it's also good for me to practice doing what is not easy for me, and that is caring about people.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the same thing with how they treat narcissists. One of the best ways to treat them, almost the only way, is to do group counseling, but they don't get to ever talk about themselves. The whole time, what they do is explain other people's feelings as they're occurring in the group, and then the group can, or the person can then talk back how that related or was inaccurate or inaccurate, and them learning that. Because it's so self-focused. The same thing in a sense for me. I do a lot of kindness, but it's not that that's like some desire I have. I actually, not to be mean, but actually not to care. It's more my thing. Like, yeah, whatever. But so I realized it's like painting. If I was gonna paint a canvas, would I paint it so it was beautiful? And I don't mean that just that it has to be certain aesthetic, but because I like goth and stuff, so my idea of beauty might be a little different. But I'm just saying that, but I would do something that me myself feels is adding beauty to the world. And that's what I realized in general, that is what kindness is doing. It is like the opposite of religion, because it goes back to me like it's about coercion. Religion wants you to believe stuff. I just like when I've done activism at colleges, and I have candy there and books, and I don't sell it or push anything. And some people go, "Can I just take the candy?" I go, "Sure." I don't say anything to them. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Because I'm not pushing anything.
Right.
All I try to do is address, hey, how are you feeling like you're doing? These are these feelings you're feeling. Don't you feel this? Don't you understand this isn't good? Like, what's love? Well, love is a behavior, not just a thinking. If all it is thinking and there's no distributed behavior, I start questioning, is this really love? Maybe we have a different opinion of what that word must mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, because if the word and the actions don't line up, and that's one thing that helps me to break everything down. If the words and the actions don't line up, then it's a lie. So
Right.
People use words all day long that have no meaning behind them by their actions,
And that's why I try to say that I want to be so different that everyone notices.
Yeah.
Everyone.
See,
notices.
you and I've had
to argue with me. Notice.
Yeah. You and I had this discussion, and I completely honestly understand everything that you're saying in that. I, on the other hand, was too generous, and I have had to set boundaries, and
But
so
I would say that to me, that's what we had this discussion. I think that for me personally, it's that I didn't understand kindness, but no one else does either. I had to figure it out, and now I'm trying to teach everyone else that kindness is, because we had religious kindness. Well, Jesus is kind, right? Jesus is loving. Is he? The story of Jesus, just think of it, is a God who cannot forgive without something being broken and tortured to death.
right.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of this is just think about it. Is that, just stop there, is that sound consistent with something loving? Is that a being? So it immediately, like I said, if you just understand, if you think different, without, that's what I was saying too. The problem is we don't. We think how we were taught to think.
Yeah.
So we've been programmed that this is love, but it is not love. That's not. Well, to love God is to fear Him. Yeah, no, that's right there. That's where you already are. To me, you're setting up like a toxic relationship. That sounds like an abusive spouse would say, "Hey,
Yeah.
you understand? To love me is to be afraid of me."
Right. And you wouldn't accept that from a spouse, or some people would accept that from a spouse. I did, not the one that I've got now, but
Yeah, well,
but
I don't accept that. I
Right.
constantly say that I want to do as many. I still say thank you every time that we eat meals. I'm talking about with either I cook, she cooks. We still are appreciative. We still open the door. I've been married for, I think, I don't know, 16 years or something. But I don't act any different than when I did at the beginning, because I feel like that people feel like they can just, keep doing this word called love, where the behaviors are nothing like when it started. I mean, they act like
Right.
total crap to each other, and yet they're still calling it the same thing from the beginning.
Right.
And I think that, like, once it goes back to me, though, that I need to be willing to step outside of myself and see from like an outside perspective. And I don't like this to people say walk in your shoes. I actually want to relook at mine.
Yeah.
Because I know that, like, I don't know if you know about narrative therapy, but it's a way of, like, we tell scripts. Totally think this is accurate. We get into scripts, and we can also retell a script by adding and changing stuff. Guess what? It's our script. The perception of exactly what an event happened from a person being victim to something, that where you can be empowered, can sometimes not be the event changing, but our perception of it changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I used to feel like I was, no good, because here I am, this person that has a real problem with anger and not caring. I probably shouldn't be around people talking, and yet now that's what I do, like, all the time. I never would have thought that'd happen. And people seem to like me beyond me just bamboozling them, with charm or something.
Welcome guy there, Damien. I've enjoyed our conversations. I think you're great.
I think you're great too. Could you go ahead and tell us a little more about the process and stuff?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we've talked about in the beginning when what happens with we're open-minded, we're starting to receive the input of what they're giving us. So curiosity is the main thing that we're in there learning, from a strong desire to know or learn something. Learn to gain knowledge or understanding by studying, instruction, or experience. And so then what happens is they begin studying their Bibles, and they begin receiving impartation from their pastor and then from the congregants, right? And then they begin correlating their personal experience within the indoctrination. Like, for instance, you'll hear sometimes people say they've been diagnosed with cancer, and they're going to have to go in and have one section removed, and then they'll have to do chemo. And after they finish their treatment, they'll say, praise God, because they believe that God is what brought them through that, when in actuality, it's science. But what they've done is they correlated the good thing with their belief. Okay. So, and that happens so much. It's everything that in religion is considered to be supernatural is actually science. It's just your idea of correlating it with your mindset,
Or like me, I have a real ability to talk to people and manipulate them. I can. That's why I was going to really get into counseling, and especially I was going to do intervention.
Yeah.
Because you know what the best skill for manipulating people is? Intervention. You got to get someone who's not only not reasonable, sometimes half or fully intoxicated, and you're telling them to do what everything in their body or mind is saying not to. That takes some serious manipulation. But two things about that. As in a sense, ethical person, I don't go, if I can do that, I think I'm going to start doing that. It's just a way of being or something. That would be, to me, very unethical. And I don't do it. See, religious do that. They go, I have a thing, I should be a pastor. Because that's what someone would say, Damien, you should be a pastor. Because you can totally, or a youth pastor or something, whatever. The point is, I could do that. But see, you're not saying that the God's word is so great. You're saying is Damien's good at manipulating people. Let's put him in so that he can then use his ability against people.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's what. So that. It's, whereas, as if I explain this to an atheist, yeah, it is ability, and I actually use it against people. You'd be like, "What the fuck?" But what I
you don't see congregations being filled with a pastor that's up there and he's speaking like this and he's telling the story.
That's right.
That motherfucker better be dancing all over the stage and encouraging.
Right. In other words, he has to be a person who is good at rhetoric. I'm good at rhetoric. What I do, the difference is I use dialectical rhetoric. Dialectical is, in a sense, truth-seeking or truth, proposition, in a sense. So I call it motivational teaching. Dialectical rhetoric, motivational teaching. That's what I do. I'm good at it. But what I do is, I tell everyone, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I try to expose everything I'm doing so that nobody feels that that I'm trying to take advantage of anyone, and that B, them showing that it's not magic, it's not special, it's not anything. It's just, and then also that you can identify when someone's doing this to you.
Yeah.
So I try, like a magician, in a sense. A magician teaches you the tricks of how you trick people. Yeah, right. I know how to trick people mentally, and I teach people how that happens so that not so I can trick you or you can go trick others, but you can see, wait a minute, that is someone trying to trick me.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's like, with the breakdown, that I'm doing with this is because I want you to understand what your brain is capable of. Your brain is capable of being deluded.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Right.
That's why people can be conned.
And guess what? It's also capable of reforming itself.
Absolutely. So absolutely. Well, this is why I totally trust reason. That's why I say I don't have to push. All I try to do is I know that if I present reason, it does the job for me.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, that's me. Honestly, that has been my biggest self-help is I took everything back to what I could see, taste, hear, touch, and smell.
You have to.
If I couldn't see, taste, hear, touch, smell it, it didn't exist. And I went with that, So if it was something that I was capable of, say, like, for instance, I didn't live back in 200 BC, right? But I can read, all kinds of dialogue that come from that era in order to, make a logical decision on what is possible, right? Oh. But I don't take it and go, okay, let's run with this either. I just say, wait a minute, this is more logically possible than what this is,
Well, just think of logic in general. Don't most people, whether religious or not, you don't want science from the 1900s. You'd like it from, like, maybe even future science. I mean, you want stuff that's not even out yet. Right? Like Donald Trump took those things, and everybody's, and the COVID is taking stuff that really would not have been authorized. Right? So we want future science, but they want unchanged, arcane ideas from the past.
Right.
I find religion, to me, I feel simple because I'm an anti-religionist, but that's about the ideas. I'm not against people at all. So, well, because I'm just saying, my goal is I fight with people against their indoctrination and show them with reason why that what they have been shown, like you're doing, these feelings you feel.
Yes.
It's indoctrination. Just like people say that, I get people to doubt faith, and I always go, yeah, but see, I want people to reason. I don't care if you doubt. In fact, you don't ever have to doubt. What I want you to do is reason. Then you'll reason and realize I need to stop believing this.
Right.
Forget doubt. What? If someone says, like someone said to me, well, have you ever thought about God? I said, I think about God about as much as I think about if Stay Puft the Marshmallow Man keeps the marshmallows fresh. That is how much I think of it.
Which is not at all.
Zero. Or it would be me pondering the quality of vegetables because of thinking that the Jolly Green Giant was real and that all vegetables are fresh because they're made that way, or because of him, or whatever. But what they don't realize when they talk to me as a rationalist, especially with how much archaeology knowledge I have, oh, religion, dude, no.
That's a great analogy. The Jolly Green Giant. Love it.
Right?
Logic is defined as the interdisciplinary study of truth and reasoning. You know, back to the see, taste here. So belief, however, is the mental representation of the way our brains expect things in our environment to behave. We expect them. If we believe them, then we so as you see happening right now, you know, if we believe something wholeheartedly, whether we have evidence of it or not, we are looking through those goggles and expecting everybody else to be exactly what we believe. Then whatever, you know. So as you see, that's happening in our world right now, very much so.
Oh, I experience it all the time. Everyone looks at me, and then how I think and behave seems to be nothing of what they think I look like, and that just fucks them all up.
Yeah.
So I understand. Well, people, because just like Young said that I think it was that people don't, think, they judge.
Yeah.
And the problem, see, that would be the axiological statement. But the problem is because the value judging of something is axiology. But see, that's in a sense when I talk about that, it's like morality. It's even though you do something unethical, it's in the realm of morality. So just because I'm saying something wrong is in axiology, it's because I'm saying it's the domain of thinking it's in. You are making a value judgment. To me, it's in a sense, a value judgment presumption error. When you presume something is of value and you cannot produce any logical reason why or any evidence to support what this is or why, it's a presumption value failure. So you have failed, like a fallacy. You've offered something that was inaccurate. You can't say, I know what this is. This is valued at 100%. And I look at it and I go, what? And they go like, this thing of air. Like, what? It's right here. It's magical. You don't see it. But it's just like people don't understand ideas, like I was talking before, like what's good behavior. They think they're doing good.
Right.
But it is absolute harm. Just like to me, if religion had any ethical awareness, let's just say, what's one thing that religion could do tomorrow that would make Damien feel that there's a little more ethics in them? Never again offer any religion to a child under 7. Never. Don't ever do it. Anyone who offers religion to a child under 7 is offering it to a mind that already thinks that animism is a natural process of the world.
Right.
So another thing is they haven't developed full critical thinking skills. It is unethical to go after somebody who cannot think and try to program them before they understand the difference for themselves even of reality and non-reality. It is just, so to me, but they'll do it. They have this thing called Sunday school, which is of course thought as a good thing. And I only see it as toxic.
Yes. Yeah. Because they teach the child good or what's the word I'm looking for? Not good. I'm not going to say anything and it's good, but they teach the child the stories that we read as adults that are horrific. They teach them
like the earth flood. God makes a genocide because he didn't like what people did. Like what?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But they teach it to them in a child's mind, and a child's mind is like, oh, okay. And they begin accepting it. First, they correlate, well, I like animals, and they put them on the ark. And this is how we all, this is what their first thinking is. But eventually they begin to see what you're talking about, which is the aspect of the genocide. And they still think it's okay after they've been indoctrinated. you know?
Oh, I had people. In fact, I got kicked off of both Facebook and LinkedIn. So it wasn't because I was not doing good. I was doing good. I had thousands of people follow me on both things. In fact,
Right.
I had quite a lot for LinkedIn to me. I had 9,000 people. Not that some people don't have more, but for as radical as I am on that site, anyways, the point I'm trying to say is that one of the things that I think that I do that does allow people to come in that are, in a sense, probably wanting to investigate, like religious is what I'm talking about. On LinkedIn, I probably think half of the people that follow me were religious.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm ever tame to religion. But it is, I'm always kind to people.
Yeah.
And I think that, in a sense, not only do we, in a sense, identify there is a religious creating trauma, I think it's also upon us, especially victims, which I and you are, and well, probably most of the people, but atheists could probably have some kind of relating with it if they were raised religious, especially extreme like I was. But the whole thing shouldn't be just about like what you're doing, right? It's not just about making fun of, oh, they're stupid, not even just helping them, but realizing that it's beyond. Once you even come over to this other side, you realize you need counseling, you need stuff because you have been, in the sense, put through this trauma. Because I think that it reminds me that people don't know they have a right to say something is rape, right? Is this rape? Have you ever asked someone that? What they identify as rape?
Right.
Everybody
So,
might have a different opinion what that means.
right.
And,
Yeah, so that was actually my experience too, is that it wasn't that I didn't know what it was, right? But like I look back at this and I think, oh my God, how crazy this is. But I was so indoctrinated. I was so in fear of knowing that if I left the church family that I had been a member of, that I would end up losing them all. And I was so afraid of saying anything that I had full intentions that I was going to walk away, quietly, because I felt shameful, and because I thought I actually ended up having to go home, and literally I ended up praying to God to see if God would want me to leave this congregation after this happened. And obviously I didn't get any answers. So I had to cognitively assume that God would be okay under these circumstances with me leaving this congregation. And I did leave the congregation and then got bullied for the next 5 years. But, but I had no intentions of even saying anything about it. There was an individual in the church that was I was very involved in the church. So obviously they were gonna miss me being there. But they were gonna notice that I wasn't there, not miss me being there. but anyway, but this person was so adamant about
they may have missed you. I mean, I don't think it's accurate. Not saying you're doing this, but I don't think it's accurate when some atheists act like religious people aren't like human like everyone else. I think that's totally wrong. Just like when the religious people try to act like atheists are not part of the rest of us. Like, the hell, man. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. So this individual was adamant about the fact that my leaving that congregation was leaving the will of God for my life, and they were just really hardcore adamant about it. So I very lightly explained somewhat of what happened, and that individual went, "How dare you, say this about a man of God who's praying for your soul?" And from that point forward, the bullying began. So I ended up having to move an entire hour and 10 minutes out of the city just to get away from it.
But see, the shunning part of religion, which is almost central to some religions, especially I think Jehovah's Witness, it's like a part of their doctrine almost or something. But in a sense, even the one that I was in, if you weren't in their local church, you were considered following horrors of Babylon or whatever nonsense they would say. You know what I mean? So I mean, like in other words, if you ask someone from the local church who else is going to heaven, it would be other local church members, not the rest of Christianity.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so you know, I live in the dirty South, the Bible beating belt, and here I have literally been in the store and heard two different denomination of Christians arguing
Oh,
over the fact that their church was a better place to be and their pastor was better, and I'm like, you're both of Abrahamic belief system. Like,
yeah, I've heard people that in the same one have different opinions about what that person, like for me, one of the things when I was a kid that I thought was bad, our pastor at my mom's, because I lived with my dad in the local church, and then when my mom left years later, I ended up going, but to live with her. But she was fanatical, but still. But now she went to a thing called the Eagle's Nest with Gary Greenwald, I think is his name, or maybe he's dead, I don't know. But anyways, but the dude had like machine guns. You know, he's talking about the Russians were coming. Well, he's like a conservative, so but he would dress in suits and stuff, so he was not, redneck, but okay. You're in a suit with a machine gun. That doesn't make me feel more safe. That almost makes me feel more nervous. But, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that doesn't really help, because then, like, yeah, no, you're trying to make it look like you're normal, but yeah, that machine gun that you have, kind of.
yeah.
No, but once again, not that Gary Greenwald was doing that all the time, showing people that. But I'm saying I knew him because my dad was and my mom were like assistant pastors, like they're fanatics. They want to be right in the thick of that shit. But anyway, so I just said that's the pastor. But so he said, "Oh, we're gonna have this drive for children," and everyone brought all these bears, right? And then I'm watching this as a kid, and this sickened me. And I looked around, couldn't believe it. Everyone else was thinking it was clapping. I think it was great. He picked the 4 best bears for himself. They were given for children to give to a charity or whatever. And he, in front of the congregations, had all these bears, and he picked the ones 4 he liked and kept. I was like, you just took stuff the best from children in front of this entire congregation. What a guy. They're all clapping, and I'm like, so it even reminds me now. I thought then, wow. But it is now, they have pseudo-morality. That's why I tell them I fight against that all the time, pseudo-morality. What's pseudo-morality? Oh, come on now. You know what it is. Just like saying that gay is a sin. Like, a sin of what?
Yeah.
But so to me, in general, they get this pseudo-morality way of thinking, just like I said, pseudo-morality, that a God can genocide the whole earth and he's still a good God. Perfect, unblemished.
Yeah,
Go,
they don't think about things. They accept them. I should know. I was one of them. I accepted it as though, well, God has his reasons. It must have been justified. That was my thinking. And I accepted hell because there has to be justification for people who do wrong. Of course, I know it's not all that now. So what ends up happening is through all of this attendance and beliefs, and once they were open-minded, when they went into this, they may have been open-minded and wanting to receive. Well, they received. They end up being honed into a specific mindset. So there's a gradual closing of open-minded free thought toward directed. They are ended up being directed toward an organization of perspective. So now when you went in with this, I just want to know, now you've got this, this is how it is. it's written in stone. God says that finishes it, you know, and you're so close to anything else through methods of fear.
Yeah.
You know, that's the main one there, because if you think about it, you've got fear God, fear hell, and the only middle ground you have is maintaining yourself in church, you know.
Well, I feel it's almost like a carrot and a stick to me. It's both fear and love. Because let's just say, like right now, if I told you, I love you, I love everything about you, I love you as a person, I love your work that you do, I love, even though you know that I was just doing that as an example, I bet it still a little bit makes you feel good to hear that, because we are emotional beings. We are not some logical beings that just
Right.
taste emotions at the theme park. You know,
Right.
no, we live the theme park. Once in a while, we taste logic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. There, the love is the factor, but you're told that you're loved. You're told these things were done for you out of love. And you read through these horrific stories and you say, well, that's not for me because I'm loved.
Right.
And you never once consider, wait a minute, that's not love. And if that's the God you believe in, who you think loves you, and that's been done to all these other people, never once.
So you've been taught, which I have a blog about, you've been taught pseudo love.
Yeah, exactly.
So you go into the world, so they go, well, how is religion harmful? It teaches pseudo love.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That alone, and I also think too, just think of the hours wasted that I gave to a God that I could have spent with real people helping in the world that need help.
Right.
Not spending on this nonsense.
Yeah.
And like you said too, the other sad thing I see, to me, there's really a trauma that people don't realize. They become sick. You know this because just think, if you really believed, let's just put you right in this God world, or not, let's say you, someone else, don't have to push it against you. Why? Because sometimes I don't want to. Well, because one of the things I'm good at is doing transference to people, and I'm not trying to do that to you. I was just, I want to make it abstract. Well, because I'm not trying to do that. So I want to make it abstract. So I'm just saying that there's a person, and they have this religious experience, and they're told, in a sense, all this stuff. And it's like when they remind me of the thing when they call it heart-shaped box. Yeah, because you invented the box. There's no box. But they did invent the box for you, and now God fits inside of it. And now you're like, well, I have to let the box go. And I'm like, there's no box.
Yeah.
There's nothing to let go of.
Right.
What I'm asking you to do is start believing in yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Which leads me to the breakdown of what happens in the aftermath. So in the end of conformity, what usually starts it off is cognitive dissonance. Something happens that means a lot to you, that affected you very deeply, and it doesn't align with what you've been taught. And so cognitive dissonance is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes. So, for instance, I did an example. Our entire church prayed for Sister Jane. The Bible says where two or more are gathered together in agreement, God is in the midst of them. But Jane still died. Okay. Yeah. So that creates, that's what cognitive dissonance looks like at the point it begins. And then the individual, once they've experienced cognitive dissonance, begins asking questions of people, begins researching scriptures. That's the initial response. But when they don't have a resolve within themselves, then they begin to look outside of the, very secretly now, they begin to look outside of what they've been taught into other curricula, and they start here and there finding answers that at the time are mind-blowing, because this is nothing that they've been told about, but it fits perfectly, you know. And so after I've got the rest of it. You got my list on there? Because I stopped writing after.
Oh, I don't have. I would have to close the video down. I didn't.
It's fine.
I
So
wasn't.
anyway,
I wasn't expecting to have to present it.
okay. So anyway, so what ends up happening after that is you know, they begin searching their outside curriculum and finding new answers, and then pretty much at once they've begun questioning outside of it, they begin to fully deconstruct, because one question leads to another question, leads to another question, leads to and it keeps going. So
Well,
at that,
and I think that's good, and that's also why I teach, in a sense, the hammer of truth. So
yes.
the hammer of truth is 3 philosophies that I have boiled down that you should use in sequence always to understand what is true or not, whether it's being presented to you or even in your own mind. You should think about your own thoughts. The ontology is the first thing. The ontology is the thingness of a thing. Like if I say there's a chair, chair's a mental concept. If I stick a chair in the ocean, does a fish know what a chair is?
Yeah.
No, it's limited to humans' understanding of use. A chair is something that has to be able to sit on. Otherwise, it's not a chair. And so, anyways, you start to get ideas that there's limits to what an ontology is. That's where God can ever fit. They say there's an ontology argument for God, which is, to me, nonsense. They try to invent something. That's not how you should use ontology. Ontology is like a metaphysics of understanding what is really real. And it's a way of breaking it down, slowing down, asking certain questions at a time. So when I'm presented with the God concept, I think in ontology, what is a God?
Yeah.
And then they said, well, God's a spirit. And I go, what is a spirit? And I go back to ontology.
Yeah.
And they say, the spirit is something supernatural. And I go back to ontology. What is supernatural?
Right.
Until they give me, let's just say, so that's ontology. Let's say somehow they can achieve that, which in magical crap, they're never going to be able to, if I really want them not to, because there's nothing real for them to show me. But so then you go to epistemology for me, and that's, to me, is how do you know, how are you claiming to know this, in a sense? How do you know what you say you know? It's not evaluating it, it's just asking you, okay, you said this claim. How do you know that? So they're supposed to offer some argument to support the justification, in a sense, of the claim. Then axiology, after they've offered their epistemology answer, then does the job of value judging. Is what was just offered worthy? In other words, I feel it in my heart. Is that as worthy as this scientific publication, found out through research of 30 years, longitudinal study with 30,000, anyways, my point is, does that sound the same? Axiology immediately goes, not even close. And it sees the value difference. And it allows us to then say, what was offered is no good. I don't even have to accept it. And so one is saying, what are you talking about? How do you know that? And why is what you offered a value?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So what ends up happening in the aftermath of that is they have an identity crisis, because now this is what they've identified with all of these years, however long they've been in it.
And it takes us to really understand with compassion. I feel like it's easy to laugh, but then we really need, though, is the compassion, because they're a victim. I think that's what the problem is. They're not a backslider or a sinner like the religious people think. And they're not some fool like some atheists, like to feel like that people who, they're a victim. They're a person who was indoctrinated and doesn't know how to think. So it really, to me, is not to, in a sense, make fun of these people, which I try not to do, is actually to realize that these people need my help. And I have compassion and I want to help them.
Yeah.
They're just like you. It used to be me. So
at the point that they have their identity crisis, it becomes a very dangerous moment, because I know I can speak for myself, although it's common within RTS victims, but I personally began the self-medicating aspect of it, and I literally felt like I was walking outside of myself, like I literally felt like I was hovering to the right of me, and nothing was making sense, and everything was just, like a TV gets glitchy. Everything was just in front of me, glitchy. Nothing made sense. Everything was confusing. Self-medicating, became suicidal. Ended up having to be mentally hospitalized. All of that jazz. And then, of course, through that, I became diagnosed with the post-traumatic stress disorder, which I've since learned is CPTSD, and the dissociative identity disorder, which was the feeling like I was not in myself, and then since then, even though I have been processing through this for years, and I'm on the other side where I understand the difference between reality and delusion today, I'm still now, the post-traumatic trauma has been linked to causing autoimmune diseases. So I have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia and thyroid disease. I have esophageal issues. I've developed all kinds of food allergies that cause anaphylaxis issues, that I can't eat certain foods anymore. I have had to have a hysterectomy due to just an excessive flow of, menstrual cycle. And then also, I have been diagnosed with prediabetes because of the thyroid. I can be put on medication for thyroid today, and I have to be on it. But if I take myself off of it, it goes straight back to zero. And so when I'm on the medication, if I'm not excessively working out, a person who has thyroid disorder has to, according to doctors, work out, do at least cardio at least 5 days a week for an hour each day if they want to see benefits to their thyroid. So I have to do that if I don't want to have prediabetes or full diabetes, because my weight now continues to drastically climb, whereas before the trauma, I was, a size 5 and a little tiny, teeny thing, and I was very athletic, and all of that jazz. So this has really, it's been more than just a mental process for me that I've had to go through. I've had to deal with the physical process of it as well. And every time a new physical ailment occurs, or one of the old ailments that I've already been diagnosed with decides to flare up, I know why it's there. So then it goes back to the mental process of having to, go through the anger all over again. And you know what I'm saying? It's bad. But with that being said, coping skills have been so beneficial to me, and what I mean by that is finding myself, becoming acquainted with myself, realizing my likes, and when I'm having a bad day, doing what I like, I'm all about do no harm, but do no harm, take no shit. but if what I'm doing is not harming someone, then
Oh yeah, well, I just to go back. Even though I'm kind, I don't take any shit. Have you ever seen a video? Go watch a video where I argue with someone. I don't take no shit.
right, I seen you. I see it. I'm still nervous about coming. No, I'm joking.
No, but no. I tell people I'm a terror to tyrants, and I try to be virtuous to the vulnerable. So I don't. If someone's a jerk, I can do that. I've had people that were psychopaths thinking that they can attack me online, and I spent 3 days and got them to apologize.
Yeah.
But I'm like, dude, you're a psychopath. I'm a sociopath. Let's play. But I'd like, oh, give me the number to your church. I'm gonna call your pastor about you. Oh, don't think I'm playing. Give me your number. I'll call your family. I'm a sociopath. Do not think I'm playing. I have no fear of that at all. I have no shame, zero. If I feel it needs to be done, I have zero shame. I'll do it, and I'll talk to the pastor. I'm like, yeah, this guy's online. He's posting this toxic stuff. Is that really a representation of how you want to have Jesus represented through your church?
Right.
Oh. I'm not even kidding. Go ahead. And any pastor, also, like one time, I went and to do a speaking event when Trump came in. I wanted to do a speaking event in Indianapolis, because of Pence. So I wanted to go there and do a secular thing and saying, I don't support this kind of nonsense, but it's more secularism than really trying to be directly atheism. I said religious people are welcome. Anybody against this, nonsense, evil. And so I called all the churches in the area, because I'm a sociopath. I got no fear. I called every single church in the area, and I tried to send them all a message and email saying, well, maybe I didn't call them. Called some, and I emailed most of them. So, but I'm trying to remember right. But anyway, so the point was, my goal was to show them, that I am willing to have them come. That I feel like that for me personally, there's things that I care, like human rights. I don't care who's up for that, but that's on my side. I don't require you to be an atheist before I care about human rights. If you also care about human rights, we think correctly the same.
Right.
But also, I thought it was funny that one church, maybe it was two. I think it was two, maybe two responded, and one church though tried to challenge you. Well, I have a question for you. But why are you an atheist? I'm like, oh, wonderful question. So I sent them the stuff about Jesus. And they're like, oh, I'll have to talk to a pastor about this. And the pastor comes back, oh, yeah, we appreciate you contacting us, and we're not going to be showing up. Thanks. Yeah, no answer to my questions about Jesus. Oh, yeah, those were some good questions, weren't they?
I did a similar thing to that about 4 years ago. I did a video about, well, at the time I was referring to it as spiritual abuse, and I did a video about it, and I was still on Facebook at the time, and I posted it on every church that was on Facebook that was located in Alabama. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I received a message from one of them saying that their pastor wanted to speak with me, and I was like, okay, well, I'm open to that. So I went ahead and gave her my phone number for him to call me, and he did. And the only thing he wanted to talk to me about was that he had compassion for the fact that I went through what I went through, but he would prefer that not be posted on his Facebook page. So that's about how that ended for me. Nobody else really responded. So.
Oh, I've talked to Ray Comfort. You know who that is?
No.
Oh, they call him the Banana Man. People have, well, I don't know. Atheists make jokes about. I don't know how much you're in the atheist community, but he is a street preacher and evangelical, and he's the one that did a bunch of creation videos and stuff. Anyways, him and Ken Ham. You know who that is? Okay, another creationist. Anyways.
Sorry.
Whatever. Anyways, I was just going to say that I've talked to these people, in person, and to me, I already thought that after talking to I know you don't know him, but Ray Comfort, I felt like he's a liar for Jesus, because I listened to what he said, because he tried to do, he has this thing, once again, they're not genuine, like the religious bullshit. It's a con. That's what people don't get. It's like how I see it, at least. It's like a con, like all these con skills, all these good sociopaths, or psychopath skills of manipulation, and then they predatorily pick on people.
Yeah.
So, but because they're set up to get the uneducated, the vulnerable,
Yeah.
the needy. I mean, just like the fact they always try to go after hospitals. Yeah, they want the injured. They want people in a mindset. They don't go, is the most empowered people and all enlightened. Yeah, we want you. No, they don't want those people. They don't want the free thinkers. So it's really, to me, it's insidious, the fact that it's that way. If it was true, why don't you wait until 18? Let the kid choose themselves. I mean, if it's true, and if God works in any way possible, and you don't have to do things.
Exactly. I know. I've used that logic with him before too. I mean, hey, if God is all omnipotent and fully capable of doing all things, then why does God need you to tell someone else about him? I've
Or
used
if
that.
they don't, somehow you won't happen some other way that God won't work if it's not directly through them. But I know that they know if they don't get you while they're young, you probably won't get them at all.
Yeah.
But then it's not about true. It's just about making sure you get them.
Yeah. See, I wasn't a child who was raised in church. I was the one that ended up going in because at the time my life was in a shambles, and I was 15. I was married, and I had one kid. And I of course I live in the South. It's the thing you do here.
Right.
And so I thought I was doing what was right for myself and my family. And boy, couldn't I have been more wrong.
Well, and the general society crisis tells us, right? It says the fact that they give a religious exemption on taxes says that religion is special in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, so they're already, society is already saying, oh no, these things are different. This.
So the way that the 10% of tithes and offerings go into the church, that may not be taxed, but our government makes money off of the sale of Christian, books, shirts, whatever else you buy in the name of God. They make over $1 trillion a year. That's more than Apple, So of course it's going to be something that's going to be permitted in this culture, in this society.
That's true. This is definitely a wealth positive society.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So.
Well, I really appreciate your time, and I know it's your birthday. Don't want to keep you on your birthday. Is there anything else that you wanted to ask me or say, or?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, Damien. I'm honored to meet you, and thank you for this. This is awesome.
Right on. Well, I hope that you do well, because I think that this stuff needs to get out. I'm totally, for us realizing what really happened, because, like I said, just like I've already said before, that it's about this, not just pseudoscience. It's not just about pseudo history. It is about pseudo morality, and that interacts with our psychology. Because what we think we moral, people live their whole life off what we think is moral.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your whole world. That's why they go worldview. You mean how you view the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, so when you give someone a skewed, sick, like a toxic relationship morality, of course it's going to make their whole world bad. Or has the potential to, I should say. Yeah. So I appreciate what you do.
Thank you. One more thing I do want to add is I do want people to know that my book, which you can find at DeannaLLawlis.com, has been listed at publisher's cost. If you cannot afford to buy it still, message me on Twitter at Deanna Lawlis, and I'll make sure you get one in the mail. And then on my website, DeannaLLawlis.com, I also have 2 different types of t-shirts and 2 different types of coffee mugs. I'm not profiting off of these. I'm just wanting them to get out there so that we can raise awareness. I feel like the more people see the hashtag religious trauma, the more questions will start getting asked. If not in person, people might go home and look it up and see what it's about. So that's just a raise awareness sort of thing. You can message me also on Twitter if you want more information on that.
And I think my last thing I would say is that I think the problem is that religious trauma is something you experienced, but the experiencer thinks it's something wrong with them.
Yes.
Right? Because the thought is, I left religion. I did something.
Yes.
No, you stopped what was being done to you.
Yes. In fact, what occurred in the aftermath when I ended up having my mental breakdown at the point that I was diagnosed with PTSD and DID is what was said by the church is that this was what happens when people walk out of the will of God for their lives. But no, it was actually what happens when you're a part of a church that's like that, and they're all like that in some way, shape, or form. Some are not as bad as the others, but it's all the same indoctrination, and you know.
Well, I know, like I said, it's always teaching the 3 things that I, as an anti-religionist, completely. I would say, they go, "What are you really against?" Is it saying you're anti-religionist? And I'm like,
Yeah.
make it simple. 3 things. There's more stuff, but 3 things. All religions, in a sense, teach pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality. These 3 things make it toxic and unacceptable to me, especially if you're giving to children that cannot think.
Agreed, 100%.
So, right on. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop it.
Thanks.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist, humanist, philosopher, and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, ignosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity, I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality, things that are found in religion. I support realism, axiology, of course, liberty, justice, ethics. I am also an anarchist socialist. I support anarchism and socialism, progressivism, liberalism, philosophy, psychology, archaeology, and anthropology, advocating for sexual, gender, child, secular, LGBTQIA+, race, class rights, and equality. So if you can guess from all that, I support or challenge that I have an eclectic variety of videos on a variety of topics. Please take time to check them out, as well as if you enjoy them, please give them a like. And don't forget to subscribe, as new things are on their way all the time for my channel.